I want to say a special thank you to him for his patience, you know, even going through all of these technical issues that I've just mentioned. Andy is a certified, Andy Chadwick is his full name, but he's a certified information security expert with over 35 years in the field of cybersecurity, intelligence analysis, program management, security operations, and information assurance for UK government departments, including the National Cybersecurity Centre, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, and partner agencies. He has predominantly worked overseas in the Middle East, Asia, and Africa, with extensive experience in global diplomatic engagement, relationship building, international relations, and strategic affairs. He is the recipient of the Prince of Wales Award for Building International Partnerships, Middle East. Andy is the UK FCDO lead on cyber, tech, and digital security themes for Africa, covering a range of topics including cyber diplomacy, cyber capacity building, cybercrime, emerging technologies, IoT, AI, data governance, and associated standards, policies, and legislation. He has a wealth of experience in directing security operations and delivering complex, high-value cyber capacity building programs, and driving business transformation initiatives in the international arena. He has extensive experience of leading large, multidisciplinary, multicultural, geographically dispersed teams. And is an accomplished global cyber risk, policy, and technical advisor to government departments and national cyber agencies, with a proven track record of demonstrating resilience and delivering successfully at pace, under pressure in a myriad of challenging and multifaceted security environments. Andy is based in Nairobi, Kenya. I met him while I was in Kenya recently, where he is currently heading up the FCDO Africa Cyber Network, a team of dedicated cyber offices across Africa, which has developed under his leadership since its inception in 2019. He has a passion for cybersecurity, and in particular for mentoring, developing, and supporting the next generation of cyber experts in Africa. It is little wonder that Andy has made out time out of his very busy schedule, which I'm hoping I have been able to share how busy he is to be able to be part of this session. Please, let's give Andy a rousing welcome and an applause as he unmutes his mic and joins me right on stage. And thank you. Excellent. Andy, I'm here. Hello, Andy, okay. Can you hear me?
I can, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. I'm trying to find your video. Since I got back in here, it's a bit weird on my end. Let's hope I find you really quickly. Okay, great. I'm going to take myself off spotlight. Maybe that will help. Great. Okay, so you can speak. You can speak, and let's
okay.
Yeah. Great. So,
great.
Yeah.
Well, you know, thanks for that great introduction. You're making me blush. It's I didn't expect to read that all out, but thank you very much. And first of all, I'd like to say that I'm really honored to be here today to speak to all of you at this CyberGirls Fellowship Open Day. And secondly, I'd like to express thanks to everyone at CyberSafe, the sponsors, and all those responsible for making this event happen today. And thanks very much for inviting me to join. And of course, everybody who is attending today, thanks for your attendance and good to see you here. So I'm going to cover a few subjects, really. Just going to kind of not spend too long with PowerPoint and me talking, but just really to set the scene for some questions and answers and some interaction at the end, which I think is going to be more valuable. So let me just try and share my screen. Hopefully this will work. Let me get that and do the slideshow. View slideshow, there we go. Can you see that introduction? Let me go back a bit.
Yes, we can see that.
You can see that, okay, great. So I don't really need to do the introduction. You've already done it for me, Confidence, so thanks very much. So, you know, I'd really want to cover a few topics. Number one is I'm going to talk about what I do and how I got in this role and, you know, what my career path was. I'm going to talk about cyber threats. I was asked to talk about theft of data, data theft, and other malicious activity. And I think what I've decided to do is talk about the corresponding roles, what job roles, what career paths exist to combat those threats. And then perhaps give a few tips, some things I've learned along the way that might be useful to people, just a few, a handful. And really just leave that question and answer session open. And please do reach out to me after this event as well. You'll have my social media and email contacts, and I'm very happy to answer any questions from anybody who's here today. So as Confidence mentioned, I head up the UK's Africa Cyber Network here in Nairobi, and I work for the FCDO, but I'm actually on loan from the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre. And I've been in Africa since 2019, and I've got a team of regional leads across South Africa, Nigeria, and Ethiopia. And really, the two main bits of work our network do, I just want to touch on these very briefly. We do cybersecurity capacity building, so that's everything like CNI protection. We develop skills, cyber skills, law enforcement, cybersecurity awareness programs, all that kind of stuff. And the second part is cyber diplomacy, which might be new to you. It's kind of a new theme, really. It's only been around a few years. And this is about encouraging voting at the United Nations. So getting countries to think about the future of internet governance, cyber governance, and about future cybercrime treaties. So we're involved in that lobbying and trying to get African nations to look at that and make decisions for themselves on the way the future of the world should look with regard to cybersecurity. So how did I get here? How do you become a cyber diplomat? If this is something that appeals to you, there are many different ways that people end up in these roles. But very briefly, I'll run through I started off in radio communications. I had a passion for radio when I was a kid. I used to make radios and talk to people around the world. So I got into the tech world, really because I was interested in the world and, traveling and different cultures. I ended up, this is back in the 80s, late 80s, when we were in the Cold War with Russia, which we are now back again in that situation. So I was involved in intelligence operations, signals protocol, network analysis, all the different technologies you can see there, satellite, cable, mobile, internet. And when the internet started to develop, that became a real battleground. This became an intelligence area where we had to focus as for national security. So I got involved in cyber, defensive and offensive operations, cybersecurity capacity building, which I've mentioned. And I ended up, when they set up NCSC in London in the UK, I joined the international engagement team in London for the NCSC in the UK. And that led me onto this role in cyber diplomacy. So this gives you an idea how your career can develop. You start off on one area and it leads to another, and you can end up being somewhere in 20, 30 years time where you didn't think you were going to be. You started off, with your hands on the keyboard, looking at networks, and it could take you anywhere. So I just wanted to highlight what is possible with careers. And talking about cyber threats. So I just wanted to touch on that, about data theft. I've just been in the YouTube videos and seen some of the expertise there that already exists. I used to do this day in, day out. I was an intrusion analyst. I used to do, SOC operations, all that stuff. I've done, pen testing, incident handling, the whole bit. So I think most of the people on this call will know what these cyber threats are. Phishing, malware, web and app compromise, espionage operations as well. But there are other things besides theft of data. There's ransomware, DDoS attacks, which is stopping the accessibility to your data and your systems and your services. Supply chain is going to be becoming more and more crucial. So that we've already seen the effects of, malicious activity with regard to supply chain. So that's something we need to look at in the future more. We're seeing a growth in cyber warfare. Nation states attacking each other using espionage. And we're seeing that, right now, and that's only going to get more and more complex and more developed and a greater scale with that hostile state activity. And I think looking to the future, we're going to see the explosion of IoT. We're going to have 5G networks, very fast data networks. So IoT is going to be a big issue in terms of vulnerabilities. We're going to see the cloud being used, working from home. We're already seeing that distributed architecture. And then AI is going to be a big thing. That's going to automate a lot of these processes. We're already seeing automated cyber attacks and automated defense as well. And as I mentioned earlier, cyber warfare is going to get more and more complex with the use of things like drones and space and who knows where this is going. So there's a big range of cyber threats out there. That's really what I wanted to highlight. And how do we deal with those threats? You know, the way we deal with most of these threats are the basic measures and controls and prevention we put in place. And I've listed 10 here. These are actually the NCSC 10 steps to cybersecurity. So these are basic things that any organization or any business can do. So, you know, I won't read them out, but you can see there what they are. A big one for me, I'll just highlight engagement and training. You know, your people are very important. Awareness training, and this is, you know, why I'm a big advocate of cyber safe, because of that awareness creation across the continent, especially in Africa, where, you know, a lot of people are still not online, but it's it's an early immature market in many cases, where we need to promote more awareness, more engagement, more training. You can see some of the other things there: data security, incident management, and supply chain security. So these are the kind of controls and preventions we need to put in place. So what does that mean for us here today? I guess, you know, what we're interested in is your careers and where you're going to go in the next few decades with your roles. And it kind of drops into two areas. And there's the technical side, which I think everybody is kind of aware of. But I also want to highlight the non-technical side of cybersecurity skills, because that's just as important in many ways. And let me just touch on a few of those. In terms of technical, I think all of this will be familiar to many of you here. So sort of network monitoring, SOC operations, digital forensics, incident response, malware analysis, and so on, cloud security, cyber threat intelligence, and things like, you know, consultancy and assurance and auditing. On the offensive side, we have vulnerability analysis, pen testing, OSINT, security testing, all that red teaming stuff, which is also important. You could also add social engineering into that. So they're the kind of technical roles that are available to develop your career. On the non-technical side, so these are the ones I want to really highlight to people. So if you're sat there and you want to get into the world of cyber, and maybe you're not, the real deep technical stuff is not your thing, maybe look at some of these roles. So there's, you know, risk management, threat management, developing strategies and policies, and, you know, SOPs, you know, standard operating procedures for businesses and organizations. A big thing here is education, training, and awareness. That is a role that, you know, people have an aptitude for that, and they may not be technical people, but they can do engagement, they can train people, they can connect with people. Strategic communications is very important, especially during an incident. You have to tell people what's going on. You have to look after your reputation and deal with your customers and your clients. So I think that's very important, as is the operational and security management of these teams. Also, there's a legal, whole legal range of jobs there as well, looking after the legislative side of things, and also, you know, compliance for legislation. And then there's other wider roles like research, customer engagement, you know, things like recruitment for cyber people. You could be getting involved in that field, recruiting cyber people and linking companies up with prospective, you know, people looking for jobs. So I just wanted to highlight those technical and non-technical roles. And, you know, I just want to finish here. I don't want to talk too much. I want to hear from you guys. But a few tips that I would like to give you that I've learned over the last, you know, 30 odd years I've been working in this field is, I would say, be bold. Don't sit in one job. Don't just like turn up, and try different roles, try different fields, see what suits you, try and find your niche. And I think the only way you're going to do that is to experience different, you know, different roles, different, you know, whether that be technical or non-technical. Try and spread yourself at the start of your career so you get a broad experience and find what suits you. The other tip, the second tip there is never stop learning. Always develop yourself, learn something new. If there's a new technology comes along, you know, have a read about it. You know, there's lots of resources online, and really have that personal growth in mind, and never stop, you know, learning as you go on your journey through your career. And the next one is, you know, do what you love and love what you do. Make sure that you want to get up and go to work in the morning. If you really don't want to be doing the job, you need to find a new job because, you know, you have a long life ahead of you. And I think loving what you do is really important for your career. And the next 2 points are about people. So people are very important. You know, we can never do anything. You know, successful people kind of don't do that on their own. They build a team around them. They have a network. They partner with people. They get mentorship, and they will mentor others. So people are important. Please, you know, don't sit on your own. Join these social activities and these events, because this is where you're going to learn and network, and it's going to help your career. And then people are also, you know, people always say, you know, it's always known that people's skills and people are an organization's greatest asset. But also, as you'll find, you know, studying cybersecurity, they're also the greatest vulnerability. The human element is where, you know, a lot of these hacks and cyber attacks take place through social engineering and by people making mistakes. So if people are like really good, they are a great asset, but they're also a vulnerability. And finally, I just want to say, have fun. You know, in cybersecurity, you know, if you've got a passion for this, you will enjoy your career and you'll have great fun. So really, that's about all I wanted to say. I'm really keen to hear from everybody. If you've got any questions, please, you know, fire some questions at me if you've got anything you want to ask. And if you don't want to ask right now, follow up after the event. I think I've got some contact details on here as well, which I'll put up there. So on Twitter and LinkedIn primarily, and that's my email address. So back to you, Confidence. Hope that was okay.
That was excellent. Thank you so much, Andy. I'm really excited that you made out time to come join us here. And those points are literally sound bites. You really hit the nail on the head. And you can also see the comment section blowing up with quite a lot of comments around that. The girls are really, really taking on these points. But we asked them to send in their questions ahead of time, and a couple of them did, but I think you have answered some of them. I will just ask them though, and we see, you know, if you want to, you know, really answer them or double down more on that. Okay, so the first question here that was asked is, how can we prevent data theft as an individual and an organization? I'm going to follow that on with the second question here, which is, can a data breach be accidental? If yes, why does it happen and how can it be prevented? So those are like questions from 2 people, but I'm bundling it into one.
Great, yeah. So, you know, in terms of preventing data theft or, you know, malicious activity that's going to compromise your organization, really, you go back to the basic steps. It's like securing a house. You know, you have to have locks on the doors, you have to have bars on the windows. It's very similar to that. You need to put the basic steps in place. It's never going to be 100%, and we have to acknowledge that. If somebody wants to break in and they've got, you know, nation states with all the capabilities and they've got all the time in the world to keep trying, they're going to get in sooner or later. So you have to be prepared for that. But I think to stop it happening, to prevent it, you need the basics. And I think you need to look at the cybersecurity frameworks. So there's things like NIST standard, the ISO 27000 standard, CIS. The one I showed, the 10 steps, is what SMEs and small companies and actually individuals can do. So back up your data, use multi-factor authentication, do your software updates for your operating systems and apps, you know, training and awareness of your staff. They're the basics, and that's what's going to cause, you know, help the prevention of this malicious activity. If something accidental does happen, and it can happen, so somebody can share a database, for example, things can get posted onto like GitHub and onto web pages. People can leave open folders online. So to prevent that, you need to have strong processes and procedures. So this is the people, the process, the technology in place. So a good CISO, a manager of an organization, should try and prevent most of that. Another key part of that is awareness and training for your staff. So they're not going to do anything silly. You know, they're going to check. You can use some technology as well to stop things being released, but sometimes it happens, and you know, that's life, and you have to have a plan on what you will do if it happens. So yeah, accidents can happen, but you try and prevent them again with the basics, with the basic procedures in place.
Thank you so much. I'm going to move on to the next question, but girls, please, if you have more questions, send them on the group chat, and I will take them. I can see Fatma's question, and I'm going to ask it very soon. Okay, so what are the impacts of a data breach on an individual and organization? The other question is, what are the security measures that must be put in place to combat data thefts?
Yeah, so on the first one, the normal impacts to any organization, they kind of fall into two broad areas. So one is a reputational damage. So if you lose your customers' data, people won't trust you. If you are a brand, if you're a company, you'll suffer reputational damage. So that's one impact. The other impact tends to be financial or business related, normally financial. So your business will stop working. You won't have access to run your business. You can't get to your files. You can't get to your data. So I think they're the two impacts. There are other impacts as well, but they're the two primary ones, which is reputational damage and financial impact. And I think the second question was about preventive measures again. Was that right? The second, yeah. So again, you go back to frameworks and those 10 steps, doing the basics right. I know it's, cybersecurity is seen as a very exciting, modern, high-tech field, but the answers actually are pretty boring. It's like, do this, do this, do this. It's like all the boring stuff we don't like to do. Like, who backs up the data every day or every week? I know I don't. I know I should. But on a Sunday evening, I try and back up my data, but it's really boring. You can have a process to do that. But, it's doing the basics is the answer for prevention. That's always the bottom line.
Interesting. So my next question, or my next questions will be, how can outsider and insider threats be minimized? And the follow-up question to that, which is another person's question, is what's the highest level of security that can be used to combat data theft? And to what extent should an organization with such security feel safe?
Yeah, so insider threat is a big problem. Like I mentioned earlier about people being a great asset, but also a great vulnerability. And people, as we've just mentioned, can make accidents, they can make mistakes, they can do silly things. But if you've got a malicious insider, that's a big problem because they can really do some serious damage because they have trust, they're on the networks, they have access to the data. So the way you prevent that is really you have to have a process of vetting people. It's not a perfect solution, but that's one aspect. So you can vet the people, see their career history, use an accredited vetting company to try and weed out people who've probably got a questionable past. So that's one approach. You can put technologies in place, to stop people, or to trigger alarms if somebody's downloading too much data and they're making connections that don't need to be there, that are unusual. So AI is really useful in this field, looking at connections in the middle of the night from people at home, loading too much data, suspicious activities. You can use technology, and you should have good processes and procedures in place so that one person is not responsible for everything. You have to have division of authorities and what your roles are. So there's all kinds of techniques you can use there, but that's the insider threat. In terms of the high level security for very sensitive data, so for example, like top secret data, so intelligence communities, when they have very, very sensitive data that they don't want to be shared, the normal approach is to have an air-gapped network. So you have a network which is not connected to the internet in any way. So you have to transfer any data via maybe a USB stick, which gets you get what they call it sheep dipping. So you will scan that, make sure there's no viruses on there. It's never 100%, but you can air gap. That's one solution, and that's widely used in governments around the world. It's not 100%. I know air gapped networks that have been hacked, and I probably can't explain here on an open forum how that happens. But nothing's 100% safe. And I know some examples where one government, they actually went to paper. They just turned off the computers and started using paper and typewriters and pens because that can't be hacked as easily. And that was a government in the last few years did that when they had suffered a big hack. They just decided IT was too risky. You want to keep it safe, don't use IT, just use paper and pen, which is a bit extreme, but it is secure, more secure anyway.
That was quite a very funny example, but thank you so much for sharing that. I have two more questions on this end, and then I'm going to begin to take the questions on the group chat. I see an interesting question there from Jacqueline in the group, in the chat, but I'm going to come to it very shortly. My last two questions on the received questions are, what are the layers of protection we must put in place to avoid malicious threats? And the last bit of that question is, to combat risk in cybersecurity, what are the response plans we must put in place?
Yeah. So the layered security is the right approach, and again, it's the basic steps. It's having the cyber, securing the human, doing the awareness, securing the networks, having firewalls, having a DMZ, having all of that in place, intrusion protection systems, having endpoint security. It's like securing a house. You need layers and layers and layers and layers. So the more you put in, the more effective it is, never 100%. So I think a layered solution, and it goes back to those basic controls, multi-factor authentication, physical security, having, good, identity and access management when you're accessing the building, locking ports down and things like that. So I think that, again, it's kind of the basics that's captured in all the cybersecurity frameworks. In terms of an incident when it happens, I think a company or an organization should follow an incident management plan. So they are kind of the basic steps, which are preparation is really important, and exercising ahead of it, so everybody knows what their role is and what they should be doing. Then you have the tech. It then falls into the main steps of detection, finding out what happened. Is there an incident? Is it a real incident or a false flag? Containment of that incident, then eradication of the incident, taking that malicious code or whatever, or removing access, and then a recovery plan and a lessons learned plan. They're the main 6 steps to an incident management. The 2 other things you need in place, which are very much associated, are you need business continuity plan. So if you're running an organization that needs to keep running, like if you're doing an online sales, for example, you need to have a backup plan, a redundancy. You need to be moved to site B, keep your operations up and running. Everybody should know the role in keeping the business running at a minimum. So that's called a business continuity plan. The other thing is a disaster recovery plan, which is a similar thing. It's recovering from a disaster. And that could be anything from a cyber attack to something like an earthquake, or an act of God, something like that, bad weather, power loss, something like that. So they're the main steps, the incident management steps, the 6 of those, and a BCP, business continuity plan, and a DRP, disaster recovery plan.
Thank you so much, Andy. I'm going to begin to take the questions from the chat box now, and I can only take 4 because we've been doing good with time management, and I want to keep it that way. We have to finish the session in 6 minutes, so we can go back to the breakout room. Okay, so Jacqueline is asking, having been in the Kenyan space, what are your thoughts on the cyber preparedness and approach to cyber? And as we go into the industry, what can we do differently? I particularly love this question.
Yeah, so that's a big question. You're talking about the whole of Kenya. So I work closely with Kenyan government departments. I do a little bit with some of the critical national infrastructure sectors, but not too much. And I don't do an awful lot with the commercial sector. But it's a mixed picture. Some organizations are well prepared and are advanced. So I think, talking typically across Africa, the financial sector are normally ahead of the game because they understand the risk better, they've got more to lose, and also they have the resources. So you'll find financial sector ahead of the game. You'll find government, some parts of government are better than others, depending what their risk is and what their skills levels are. And then I think the SMEs struggle a bit. So I know, we've had the SME toolkit launch in Nigeria, and we've done some work. We're doing work right across the continent on supporting SMEs, so small and medium enterprises. But the short answer is it's a mixed picture. Some people do it very well. Some people have got no cybersecurity at all. So we need to uplift the whole ecosystem is the answer.
Thank you so much. So a question from Obianuju. She's asking, in practice, is cybersecurity in supply chain streamlined to different actors involved in the supply chain, or does it cover the whole supply chain network?
So that's a really interesting question. And, this is a case by case basis again. I think most organizations, commercial organizations, again, financial might be different, but they don't even think about supply chain. They just, they're going by laptops and whatever comes in, they don't really have the resources, and they probably don't have the awareness to scrutinize the supply chain vulnerabilities. I think perhaps, financial sector and governments are a better place to do that. But I think there's an awful lot needs to be done on supply chain. We've seen quite a few incidents globally that have stemmed right back to supply chain. It's an easy way to get in with third-party partners for any organization. That's an easy route in to a vulnerable aspect of any operation. So I think there's no simple answer to that. An organization should look at the holistic view of the supply chain and how it can affect them. But it comes down to resources and actually awareness and actually about the expertise of the staff that people have got. It can be quite a big job, but it's something people should be doing more. Organizations should be doing more frequently and better.
Thank you so much, Andy. This will be one of the last two questions I'm going to be asking you. So this is coming from Shemim. She's asking for you to personally recommend, ways that she and other CyberGirls can sharpen their skills. Paid resources or free resources. I mean, some of them that readily come to mind, you can just throw their names or the names of these resources out there.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many, and I think there are people doing this, sharing these resources. So I think an example of this, on Wednesday, I went to an event here in Nairobi by Dr. Bright, who many of you will know, and he's got a list of resources there, which we can probably share that with people. But just Google it. There's lots of YouTube is I'm a big advocate of YouTube. You can almost learn to be a security professional if you've got time and you've got a laptop and you've got a Wi-Fi connection. Start watching the videos. Most of them are pretty good. There are some free online resources, so they're on there. It really depends on which specific area you want to get into. But YouTube is incredible. There's so many, you can really get down into the weeds on all kinds of topics. But let me see if we can share some of those resources that Bright has. He's cultivated those, and he's got a list of those. There are other organizations like there's let me think now. There's GFCE, the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise. That they've got a really good webpage, and you can see what's going on in that world. Look at the National Cybersecurity Centre in the UK. They publish guidance. They publish the 10 Steps to Cyber. A lot of good, pointers there on awareness and pointers on upskilling. And there's lots of other organizations offering free training out there. But it's a really broad area, and it's changing day by day. So I would just say, have a look online, and use your communities to share this. Share links, share resources.
So the last question was from Sarah Atuaka, and she literally she's usually just sending a lot of them. But I would just ask, I'll try to merge the two questions that she sent. Okay. She said the cybersecurity field is one with many branches and loopholes. How can you protect yourself, reputation, or company regarding legislative issues or problems? And the second question she shared is regarding cyber warfare. To be on the offensive aspect will be a neutral balance between white and black hacker. So I think what she means by this is creating a balance between being an ethical hacker and being, being a cyber criminal in essence, because that's what the black hat hacker is. So you want to share and throw some light on that?
So yeah, on the legislation and loopholes and compliance and all of that, I think this is an area where a lot of SMEs in particular are confused. They don't understand legislation. They don't understand what the requirements are. A lot of this is data protection territory. So Office of Data Protection, when do you need to report an incident? So I think big organizations tend to have a lawyer who will look at these digital and cyber pieces of legislation and what the onus is on the organizations. I think this is a growth industry. I think, we're getting more lawyers coming into cyber for exactly this reason. And cyber insurance is another big growth area in this kind of field as well. But again, it is an embryonic world. This is still growing. We're still seeing where it goes. But legislative aspects of cyber are definitely something that organizations need to consider and get expert advice. And I think we're going to see a growth in people sharing that, organizations sharing that more freely and openly. And I think offices of data protection around the world are doing that as well to give guidance. And the second part, remind me the second question again. Sorry.
Okay, she was asking about the balance, creating a balance in terms of cyber warfare.
Cyber warfare. So, yeah, when you're looking at an organization, you've got red hat, and you've got blue hat, and you've got purple hat. So, blue hat being defense, red, so you get somebody pen test. That's kind of ethical and it's agreed and it's certified. In terms of cyber warfare, it's like looking at the military. So people have guns. So nation states have offensive cyber capabilities. Many have declared that they have that. We know many countries are doing that, but I think every country in the West, certainly in Europe and North America, and the big countries that we know about in the Far East and north of us, have very strong offensive cyber capabilities. I guess it comes to values. So it's like anything else. It's like the use of a gun. It's like when do you use weapons and when do you not use weapons? It's not really a technical problem. It's a political and values-based problem or issue. So it's like, it's really tricky. So it sits with politicians and values. So when you use your weapons, is not a decision for the people who fire the weapons. It's a decision for state level. But nations do have this capability and they do use it for espionage, for offensive. They can take down power networks and so on, really damage a country. But it's a very interesting conversation, and it's sits in that diplomatic, political level, not in the technical level. But it is there and it's here to stay. We're not going to see that disappear. You probably know NATO and other organizations, they talk about the domains of warfare. You have land, sea, air, space, and then now cyber is a domain of warfare. So it's something that it's all about values.
Thank you so much, Andy. This has been a very great session, and we're right on time now to move on to our breakout rooms again to continue doing the demos. We're going to have the second half of our girls actually take turns out to demonstrate different topics within cyber as they have to do with incident response, forensic, of course, forensic is part of incident response as well, and I think a few offensive as well. So, but more of it is on the defensive side of things with the topics for this open day. The next open day would have more people with offensive demos, but it's very interesting to see these girls coming to do these demos, and I'm hoping that Andy as well, you can begin to look at those live streams again and see what the girls are able to do. But I want to say thank you so much for coming through. I see the comments in the chat again saying thank you so much. And please, ladies, remember what we always do. We connect with our speakers that inspire us, and we get to interact with them, and we share how impactful their sessions were on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or even both, or all of the platforms that you have available to you. Let's give Andy Chadwick a rousing thank you and applause as we go to our breakout room.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. So if you're joining us this live stream from YouTube, we are going back to the demo rooms again. So you know what to do. Go on our YouTube channel like you're currently on and look out for the CyberGirls breakout rooms and join any one of them and see our girls in action. Ladies, you can go back to your breakout rooms now. Thank you.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we can walk it out. Move. silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like